Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as Governor Timothy Antoine joins us. Please, a round of applause to welcome Governor Timothy Antoine. Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you that you stand if you're able and welcome the arrival of the Governor General of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, Her Excellency Dame Marcella Liburd, GCMG JP. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the Governor General, Her Excellency. May I ask you to please remain standing for the national anthem of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, which will be sung today by Ms. Corinne Brown.
On the strength of will and love, with God in all our struggles, sin, cares, and Nevis be a nation bound together with a common destiny. As stalwarts we stand for justice and liberty, with wisdom and truth. We will serve and honor thee. No sword nor spear can conquer, for God will sure defend. His blessing shall forever to posterity extend.
We thank Ms. Corinne Brown for that powerful rendition of the national anthem of St. Christopher and Nevis. May I ask you to please remain standing as we now turn our attention to the invocation, which will be delivered by the ECCB Chorale.
My shepherd I not want, he makes me down to lie. In pastures green he leadeth me, the quiet waters by. My soul has wandered, restored again, and me to walk doth make. Within the path of righteousness, even for his name's sake. Yet though I walk in desert vale, yet will I follow him. Thy rod and staff, they are with me, they surely comfort still. My table thou hast furnished in the presence of my foes. My head thou hast anointed with oil, my cup it overflows. Goodness and mercy all my life shall surely follow me, and in God's house forevermore my dwelling place must be.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for the fantastic work of the ECCB Chorale. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. Governor General of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, Your Excellency Dame Marcella Liburd, GCMG, JP, Premier of Anguilla and member of the ECCB Monetary Council, Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, who is joining us virtually, Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Climate Resilience and Social Security in the Government of the Commonwealth of Dominica and member of the ECCB Monetary Council, the Honorable Dr. Irving McIntyre, also joining us virtually, Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the distinguished Timothy N.J. Antwine and Mrs. Antwine, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Dr. Valda Henry, ECCB Appointed Director and Financial Secretary in the Government of St. Christopher and Nevis, Mr. Carlton Pogson, ECCB Appointed Director and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance for the Government of St. Lucia, Francis Fontenelle, Chief Director for Policy, Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Dr. D. Tracy Polias, distinguished panelists, and my distinguished panelists, in addition to Governor Antwine, starting in the middle, Mrs. Rosamond Edwards, former appointed director on the ECCB Board of Directors, Dr. Wendell Samuel, acting Assistant Secretary General of the CARICOM Secretariat and head of the Economic Integration, Innovation and Development Directorate, and Ms. Ulrika Antwine, General Secretary of the St. Lucia National Youth Council. We'll have more on the panelists shortly. Former ECCB Appointed Director, Hilary Hazel. Former Managing Director of the ECCB, Jennifer Nero. Former Senior Advisor at the ECCB, Mr. Eustace Liburd. Government officials, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, representatives of international and regional organizations, representatives of financial institutions, other specially invited guests, management and staff of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, very good evening to all of you. Very good evening to all of you. That's more like it. What a fantastic occasion we're gathered here for in the auditorium of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and how fantastic the audience looked, how fantastic the panelists look. A round of applause for the panelists and for yourself as the audience, please. It is an August occasion in July, at the beginning of July, a milestone that brings pride and joy to the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Wouldn't you agree, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't this a moment of pride, joy, and absolute satisfaction? I thought so too. We are on the cusp of 50 years since the Eastern Caribbean dollar was pegged to the US dollar at $2.70 to 1. It was on the 7th of July. And how fantastic the month of July is. By the way, anybody born in July? Born in July? Thank you. Wow, very good audience. Even better audience now for having so many people born in July. My birthday is coming up on the 4th. But a fantastic occasion it is. Many often lament how fleeting money is. In fact, Richard Amour said, and I'm pretty sure that many of us can agree, he said, "That money talks, I will not deny. I heard it once. It said, goodbye." But for 50 years, the EC dollar has exhibited a powerful permanence in its value, standing the test of time and the geopolitical shifts in a world of flux. Just think, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, of the tremendous changes which have happened over the past 50 years. The end of the Cold War, independence for all the states of the currency union, well, many of them, the Grenada Revolution, the extraordinary rise of the internet, social media, now artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, now on the cusp of the fifth industrial revolution, the rise of the existential threat of climate change, which threatens all our island states, and yes, the dominance and docility of the West Indies men's cricket team, and the hope we all have that they are about to turn the corner. Even though they've turned the corner so many times, we're going around in circles. But we all hope that perhaps this time the corner will be turned, and we congratulate the West Indies men's team for having won the first test match against Sri Lanka in wonderful Antigua Barbuda. Congratulations, right? But even before the 50 years, even before July 7, 1976, from October 1965 to July 1976, the EC currency was pegged to the pound sterling at a rate of $4.80 EC to 1 pound sterling. In July 1976, the peg was transferred to the US dollar at a parity of $2.70 to 1 US. The rate it remains today, tremendously standing the test of time and proving that permanence is possible despite a world of flux and change. A round of applause for the vision of those who pegged it. But I didn't come to give a speech today. That will be for our panelists. So today we're talking about money, your money, ladies and gentlemen. It is said that money is like a sixth sense and you can't make use of the others without it. Perhaps you will agree. So we ask that you sit back, not relax too much, but we pay rapt attention. And of course, when the time comes a bit later on to participate freely, we ask that you please put your phones on silent. Please keep your questions, your comments concise. And of course, we require that you show respect for all in your contributions. The panelists will make, and I've been told that they have promised this, they'll be making strenuous efforts to keep their responses to 2 to 3 minutes. Strenuous efforts, I'm sure. We'll also invite those who are posing questions and making comments a bit later on from the audience here and those who are joining us virtually to keep those questions and comments concise. And we ask that we have the tremendous occasion and contributions that are befitting the occasion. So this evening, it is my pleasure to invite to the podium in a minute or two the distinguished Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Dr. Valda Henry is Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and former Chief Executive Officer of VF Inc. She also served formerly as Senior Investment Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and played an instrumental role in the restructuring of the investment unit, as well as the development of the bank's investment management framework. Dr. Henry is a global human resources and organizational development expert and has lectured in human resource management and accounting. She holds formal qualifications in financial analysis and planning, governance, and business management. And powerfully, uniquely, Dr. Valda F. Henry is the first female Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. A rousing round of applause as she comes to give opening and welcome remarks.
Good evening, everyone. The Governor General of the Federation of the St. Christopher and Nevis, Your Excellency, Dame Marcella Liebert, Premier of Anguilla and member of the ECCB Monetary Council, Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, who has joined us virtually, Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, and Social Security in the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica and a member of the Eastern Caribbean ECCB Monetary Council, Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre, also joining us virtually. Our own beloved Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy N.G. Antoine, and his wife, Mrs. Antoine. ECCB appointed Director and Financial Secretary in the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Carlton Poxon and Mrs. Poxon. ECCB appointed Director and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, the government of St. Lucia, Mr. Francis Fontenelle, also joining us virtually. Chief Director of Policy, our own Dr. D. Tracy Polias. Distinguished panelists, Mrs. Rosamond Edwards, our former appointed Director on the ECCB Board of Directors. She holds the honor of the longest-serving female director on the Board of Directors, as well as one of the longest-serving board members of the ECCB. Dr. Wendell Samuel, Acting Assistant Secretary General at the CARICOM Secretariat and Head of the Economic Integration, Innovation, and Development Directorate, and a former beloved Senior Director of the Research Department at the ECCB, Ms. Ulrika Antoine, General Secretary of the St. Lucia National Council, St. Lucia Youth Parliament, and is also a youth worker. Our moderator of this evening's discussion, the one and only Director of News, Sports, and Current Affairs at the ABS TV and Radio in Antigua and Barbuda, Mr. L. Garfield Bufford. Former ECCB appointed Director, Mrs. Hilary Hazel and her family. Former Managing Director of ECCB, Mrs. Jennifer Nero and Mr. Nero. Former Senior Advisor of the ECCB, Mr. Eustace Liebert, joining us virtually, and his wife. Government officials, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, representatives of the international and regional organizations, representatives of the financial institution, our other specially invited guests, and here I want to recognize Patrick and the team from World Bank who are here with the Caribbean Accountants General Network, and they're all here. Well, most of them are here, so we want to specially recognize them. Our retirees of the ECCB, I see quite a few in the audience. Management staff of the ECCB, good evening again. After this long mouthful, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this special panel discussion commemorating the 50th anniversary of the EC dollar's peg to the US dollar under the theme, the EC peg at 50. Celebrating progress, charting the future. On July 7th, 1976, the EC dollar was fixed at 2.7 to US $1, a rate that has stood for 5 decades. I was going to say more than, but it's going to be more than. And we have stopped to recognize this milestone. And some persons question, why recognize a peg? I think they ask because they don't understand or take for granted that that peg has been responsible for our stability. That peg has been responsible for our growth and our progress. And that peg has stood the test of time. Not through magic, not through wishful thinking, not just on a wing and a prayer. That peg has stood the test of time for a systematic, disciplined approach. It has stood the test of time recognizing unity and the importance of unity. Because when we go back to 1976, our 8-member governments were united in purpose for this peg. But it was not just the 8-member governments. It was our private sector. It was civil society. And the research is clear that quite a big push for that peg was driven by the private sector because they recognized the importance of that peg, the importance that certainty brings. And in today's world of great uncertainty, then there was uncertainty because of the falling pound to which we were tied before. But 50 years later, that uncertainty is magnified 1,000-fold. We'll think of all the geopolitical and geoeconomic and geosocial issues and developments. We think of all of the natural disasters that we have gone through. We think of, rising inflation, supply chain issues, wars, rumors of wars. But amidst all of this, what has stood certain, what has held its own, is our easy dollar peg. We should not and we should never take it for granted. And that's why we stop to celebrate 50 years of the easy dollar peg. Many countries with much more resources than we have not been able to maintain their peg. But we, small open economies, 8 countries banded together, have been able to maintain that peg. And one of the hallmarks of our peg is trust. People trust that that peg is going to hold. For 50 years, we've gone to bed and we've woken up the next morning, and even when other things have changed in our world, what has stood still? That peg, 2.7. And what does that enable us to do? It enables us to plan. It enables us to have a certainty, to plan to send our children to study, to plan for our own businesses and our growth. And even as I was, reflecting on my remarks, I went back to Governor Antoine, and I don't know, that was his first strategic plan, and that was the first strategic plan of the ECCB in its format. Under the theme, I don't want to get it wrong, transforming the ECCU together. And the next strategic plan to follow, 2021 to 2026, under the theme, transforming the ECCU through collective action and innovation. And we come now to the strategic plan that was launched in March of this year, 2026-2031. And what is the theme? You all should know that. We just had a big celebration of this. And what was the theme? Come on, ECCB staffers, let me hear you here, loud and clear. Let's go. The big push. Don't embarrass me here. The big push. Collective action for shared prosperity in the ECCU. There is a consistency here. And that peg has enabled us to consistently work towards transformation. And in that transformation, in Governor's address in 2016, strategic plan, he asked a question. He loves to ask questions, yeah? Could you imagine a currency union where globally competitive businesses and industries predominate? young people are productively engaged and full of hope. And citizens are not merely striving, they are thriving. These questions hold still, and they have evolved into the question launched on January 19th, 2023, which has led us to this big push, collective action for shared prosperity. How do we double the size of our economies in 10 years? But not just staying here, is how do we, as individuals, double our own wealth within 10 years? And if that's not a call to action, I don't know what is. And that is a clear call for action. And what's going to help us to achieve this is what? The stability of our currency, that peg. Because that stability leads to growth. That stability leads to confidence and trust, as I said earlier. And with that, the business, the financial sector is going to be more willing to lend. Remember, Governor also told us earlier this year, they are awash with money. But they're not just going to give it to you like that, or to us. But that peg, with that certainty, it encourages people to save, because they know that their money will remain in that bank if it's value. And when we save, what do? We do not save just for saving's sake. We ought to save to do what? To invest. And out of that investment comes wealth creation, which then leads to that doubling that we speak about. We don't have to worry that this peg, our currency, is going to be devalued. And you know why I say that? Although they say you can't predict tomorrow, that may be true. But, you know, they say by the signs of the time, by the fruits you shall know them. So by the fruits that we have maintained that peg, the law requires that we have a backing ratio of 60%. That means for every EC dollar, there's supposed to be 60 US cents in reserves. We've never gotten anywhere close to that. We have maintained a backing ratio in excess of 90. Right now, the backing ratio is 99.5%. Meaning, yes, that deserves a big round of applause. Meaning for every EC dollar in circulation, 99.5 US cents is in reserves. And we manage that reserve prudently. I see Niall in that audience right here, Niall Pestiner, who is the head of the investment unit led by Raquel Leons. And he'll talk to you about our guidelines, our policies that frames. So while, yes, there are free investment rules, capital preservation, liquidity, and returns, at the ECCB we add a fourth, our peg of 60. And truly our operational peg is 80. And so you see how that further constrains us. So it's not by happenstance. And so I really want to stop here and commend all the persons before. Governor Cecil Jacobs, Governor K.D. Vivenna, and our own present Governor, Timothy N.J. Antoine, who have recognized the importance of maintaining that peg for our prosperity and our transformation, and the entire Monetary Council, the board, management of staff of ECCB past and present and future. Because I'm saying to you here, they will talk to us on the panel, celebrating progress, charting the future. Our future is bright. We must believe and we must act. Because one of the strongest elements we have is a stable currency that leads to confidence and trust. We now must have confidence and trust in ourselves that we can shape the future that we want. It's in our hands. And that is a call for action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Dr. Valda F. Henry. Another round of applause. I think she deserves another round of applause. Bank staff, Dr. Henry, were not expecting the pop quiz you gave them, right? They were trying to wrap their minds to remember the name of the big push. And of course, you'll hear a lot about the big push later on. Governor Antoine will make sure that we hear a lot about the big push. Before I continue, I welcome those who are joining us virtually. Of course, this is a currency union of over 600,000 individuals, and they are all tuned in on various media, including ECCB Connects, as well as radio stations and television stations across the region. Of course, we welcome those from Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, the Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Christopher Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Welcome them warmly. Of course, the Deputy Governor mentioned the leadership of the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy Antoine, and Mr. Antoine's leadership in that strategic vision of putting together that strategic plan up to 2031 is commendable. It is said, Alexander the Great said thousands of years ago, that I do not fear an army of lions led by sheep. What I fear is an army of sheep led by lion. And governor's leadership must be commended. Ladies and gentlemen, please show some appreciation, please, for the governor's leadership on this. It is said leadership matters, and Governor Antoine has shown that. Before I introduce you further to my distinguished panelists, perhaps, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is no hyperbole. This is easily the most powerful erudite panel ever assembled in this arena in over 50 years. I can assure you that. No hyperbole. But before that, before you hear from our distinguished panelists, what does the ordinary man and woman in the ECCU think about this peg, which of course we're celebrating today? We went on the streets in St. John's, Antigua to find out some of that. Here's a quick look. Take a look at the screen to hear some of the reactions as people talk about this 50th anniversary of the peg. Take a look.
Certainly from a historical standpoint, what it did is that it gave the public a sense of connectivity, something that is quite stable, and at the same time a currency that was very formidable currency. So the fact that it would have maintained that exchange rate for as long as it has speaks to not only the efficacy of the relationship, but the viability of our own currency.
I appreciate the stability, knowing that whenever I needed to make a purchase overseas, that the price would not fluctuate.
So I think it speaks to the stability of the ECCU, how they have managed to keep the dollar in this region stable. So it's more about the economic stability and viability of this region, that we have managed to do that for the last 50 years, and the fact that we are continuing to do it.
This is good news because it provides confidence for not only people within the Eastern Caribbean, but people doing business. Remaining at a steady rate, it provides confidence and also increases business opportunities for people within the region.
To me, it helps in two different ways. It helps to maintain competitive export pricing, so that is really good. And particularly as we're in an age now of extreme volatility, with all the trade threats that are being bandied about across the world, I think it helps that our currency has been tagged to the US dollar. Of course, that is still stable, still a grounded currency. Of course, there are disadvantages you can think about in terms of inflation.
Okay, so you got the sense. You got the view there. All right. So some of the responses from the man on the street in relation to how this peg is being interpreted. So let's hear now from our distinguished panelists. Let me introduce them very quickly to you again. And by the way, yes. Yes, of course. The governor wants more audience participation, so we'll go short on the interest. So let's start off with the Governor Antoine. Governor Timothy N.J. Antoine has been the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank since February 2016 and was reappointed in February of this year for a third 5-year term. Governor Antoine is an economist and doyen of development. He has championed a transformative agenda here at the bank focused on financial stability, digital innovation, financial inclusion, and sustainable economic development across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Ladies and gentlemen, warmly welcome, please, Governor Timothy Antoine. Up next, Dr. Wendell Samuel. Dr. Samuel is a senior advisor to the CARICOM Secretary General and acting Assistant Secretary General for Economic Integration, Innovation and Development. Dr. Samuel previously served as Senior Director of Research and Information at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and lecturer at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. He was previously served at the International Monetary Fund as well as CARTAC. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Wendell Samuel. To Dr. Samuel's right is Mrs. Rosamond Edwards. Mrs. Rosamond Edwards is an economics and public finance management advisor. In this capacity, she provides expertise as an approved short-term expert for both the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, CARTAC, and the United Nations Development Program. She was the longest-serving female member of the board of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and also served on the board of the Caribbean Development Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Rosamond Edwards. And to Mrs. Edwards' right is Ms. Elrica Antoine, so another Antoine on the panel. Ms. Elrica Antoine is a dedicated youth leader and advocate who serves as General Secretary of the St. Lucia Youth Development, so that's Youth Parliament Association, and the General Secretary of the St. Lucia National Youth Council. Ms. Antoine previously served as Youth Parliamentarian for Micoud South between 2023 and earlier this year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the youth advocate on our panel, Ms. Elrica Antoine. As I said, no hyperbole, no exaggeration. This is an extraordinarily powerful panel. So let's start off, I just want to get their quick views, starting off all the way down with our youth advocate all the way up. In terms of what one or two words come to your mind when you think about the ECPEG over the past 50 years? One or two words, just very quickly.
So I would say it's a foundation for representing young people and the voice of the young people. So I say it's a foundation for us. We don't have to go building something on our own. It's something we could build on out throughout the next 50 years.
One or two words, one or two words.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, but yes, a foundation so that we could build on.
Very good. Foundation. Thank you so much. Mrs. Edwards, one or two words.
Yes, good evening to everyone, and I'm happy to be here to participate. I'll probably use three words: predictability, stability, and collaboration.
Yeah, all right. Dr. Samuel?
For me, it's community, and that is just, since you said one word, it's just my way of saying we are all in this thing together, and the leaders and decision makers have always treated it as such, that we are all in this thing together.
Okay, so community it is. Governor?
Trust.
Okay, all right, there you go. Brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity is the soul of wit. All right, there we go.
We understood the assignment.
And I'm pretty sure that you're in the audience. You can tell us when it's time for your part in terms of your participation. You can tell us what one or two words come to your mind as well when you think about the ECPEG. Let's start off with Governor in relation to this particular matter. It's been 50 years now, as I said, the 7th of July, Governor, 50 years since the peg of $2.70 to the US. What does this milestone represent, in your view, Governor, for the people and economies of the currency union?
Thank you very much, Mr. Buford, and let me extend greetings to everyone in the room, across our currency union and anywhere in the world. The stability of the EC dollar is one of the greatest achievements in respect of regional cooperation anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. That stability has delivered for our currency union a credibility that is far beyond the size of our small economies. Credibility matters. So, at the heart of this anniversary celebration is really a celebration of regional cooperation and trust. For 50 years, the PEG, the stability arrangement, has impacted in a very positive way everyday economic life across our currency union. It has helped to preserve the value of our income and savings, anchored low and stable inflation, facilitated trade and investment, and has offered for families and businesses confidence to plan for the future. This currency has served us well. And so when you ask the question, why has it endured for so long, when many others in far bigger countries, near and far, have not? Three things come to mind. First, leadership. Second, discipline. Third, trust. The reality is that successive governments in our region have seen, recognized that monetary stability confers tangible benefits for our people. That's what we were seeing a while ago. And because of that, they have respected the independence of our central bank and upheld the discipline with respect to the prudent policies of our central bank. And therefore, I want to hail successive monetary councils and boards for their stewardship in that regard. Successive governors have provided steady leadership with their teams, ECCB staff, to pursue disciplined, prudent policies in areas such as management of our reserves, in areas such as credit extension to governments. In economics, we talk about printing money. Many central banks get into trouble by over-lending to governments. That's what we call printing money in economics, monetizing deficits. We've been very disciplined about that.
But you've come down to some
very disciplined about that.
I'm the politician's pressure.
Notwithstanding,
yes,
and the solidarity of which Dr. Samuel spoke is true. We have a credit allocation which we do every year. And there have been moments in times of difficulty where members have maxed out their credit limits. And what have we done? Helped each other out. We've called on other country that has not used all of their limit. Help me out. I need access to an extra $20, $30 million. And the countries have responded. That solidarity is a beautiful thing and has worked for us.
I think that deserves a round of applause, I think. The community.
And so I want to recognize the contribution of every member of staff, past and present, who have worked, Wendell, that includes you, who have worked, and retirees who I see here, and all of our current staff, who have worked to preserve the integrity of our arrangement. But above all that, the leaders, the governors and their teams is the people of our Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. They have reposed their trust in this currency. And they have done so because they recognize that notwithstanding the vagaries of the cycle, the ups and downs, the shocks, the storms, the EC dollar has stood firm. The anchor holds. And because of that, they have reposed their trust in us. And therefore, I would conclude by saying that stability is not a destination. It is a foundation which we must leverage for faster growth, higher incomes, and a better quality of life for all. Because we chart in the future as well tonight. We celebrate in the past, but we chart in the future. Absolutely. And that's important.
Absolutely. We're doing two things. Absolutely. Really appreciate it, Governor. Before we get to Dr. Samuel, I have to ask you this as well, Governor. What explains the fact that the EC dollar has been a North Star? The SPEC has been a North Star for the region, notwithstanding that other fixed exchange rate regimes across the world, some have not weathered the storm as much.
That's what I just said. Leadership, discipline, trust. Those things have held. If we didn't hold the line, if we didn't keep the faith, if we did not, notwithstanding the turbulence, stand firm, stand together, this would not have survived. Because you have to understand, Buford, this arrangement was never guaranteed. When our founders and framers designed this currency union, this PEG, they could not know 50 years from now with certainty that it will survive. And I would make it very clear, it has not survived by accident. This has been a deliberate effort over 50 years, and in the case of the central bank, over 43 years, with all the persons, including the people of our currency union, working together, that have caused us to be able to celebrate this wonderful milestone today.
Excellent. While the World Cup is still going on, that seems to be a fantastic goal scored so far over the past 50 years. Or Argentina supporters in there. Never mind. That's another day. That's for another day. Thank you so much, Governor, on this. This is hugely important, and it's important for us to, that's why it's important to have this panel discussion, to stop to analyze why this has succeeded as much as it has. Let me ask Dr. Samuel on this. So looking back, Dr. Samuel, to the origins of the ECCU, Governor mentioned this, touched on it. What do you think were the key policy decisions, the regional commitments, the institutional frameworks that enable the EC dollar peg to survive as much as it has?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank for organizing this exercise, and for inviting me back to be a part of it. So this is where I became an economist. I mean, I was teaching all kind of, that was theory. When I got here is where the rubber hits the road. But in terms of the question that you asked, I think the big policy was baked in from the beginning, that it limited the amount of credit that the central bank can give to government. And I think that was one of the key. And as Governor Antoine said, there was no guarantee. The other currency unions in the world, they were guaranteed by the Bank of France. And we got no such guarantee from the Bank of England. We had to do it on our own. And I think that was one of the challenges that was laid out to the monetary councils over the years. And the point that I made earlier about community is something that is very important. So once, I would give a little bit of an example. Once we were invited to the IMF for a seminar on the Eastern Caribbean currency union arrangements, and the theme of the seminar was that there is a free rider problem in the currency union. And the way they explained the free rider problem was the following: that if all of us here on the panel went out to lunch and we agreed to split the bill, there is an incentive for at least one of us to pick the highest price item, because if everybody else picked a low price item, they would subsidize my choice of the highest price item.
Indeed.
And Governor Venner was sitting across the table from me, and he whispered to me with his mouth, "We don't do that." And I said, "No, sir, we don't do that." And we could say that confidently, because time after time after time, when the finance minister sat as a monetary council, they made decisions that were for the good of the region and not for the individual country. A couple of examples. One is when we were putting together what we now call the Fiscal Reserve Fund. The Fiscal Reserve Fund is basically a rainy day savings for the region as a whole. So that you put money in when times are good, and then when the countries fall in hard times, you can go and help them. When we made that presentation to the board said, "Good idea, but where are you going to get the money from?" And what happened in the end is that each country agreed to forego a part of their profits for a few years, put money that they had already budgeted for social expenditure, to say, well, let's put it in that fund so so that later on down the road, we all can benefit. And the second one was the point that Governor Antoine made, that countries recognizing when other countries are in difficulty, say you can use part of my reserve you can use part of my credit allocation to do that. And so what that says to me is that in terms of the anecdote that the IMF gave, was that we chose every single time, the ministers of finance, as sitting as the Monetary Council, chose every single time to choose the reasonable price item on the menu so that we can have a smaller bill, and that would be for the good of the country.
So nobody chose caviar?
No.
Good.
And by the way, that fund that Wendell spoke of, Dr. Samuel, and this Governor Antoine, you could kind of back that, is really what we call today, I call the Solidarity Fund. Hurricanes, pandemic, volcanic eruption, we've all gone to that fund and given our countries grants from that fund. And he explained to you how that fund came about.
Absolutely. But before I come to, by the way, one for all and all for one, I think that also deserves a round of applause, both our governors and Dr. Samuel, in terms of the tremendous camaraderie and comity among the countries of the sub-region on that. Before I come back to Rosamond Edwards on this, has it helped, Governor, that most of those on the council are prime ministers of their respective countries? Has it helped so that it insulates away, so in other words, they understand the economics of the situation and that they're not focusing only on the political part of this, they understand the economics of keeping this. They're not pressuring their finance ministers, because some of the finance ministers are also prime ministers. Has that helped?
I think it has, because the buck stops with the prime minister. And so for many, many years, the prime minister, the finance ministers have also been prime ministers. At the moment, 6 of 8. And where the prime ministers do not sit, we do make an effort, especially on certain issues, to brief them and to make sure they are a part of it so that they are fully involved. But I have always believed, having served finance ministers who are prime ministers and who are not, I have a particular preference, which I shall not say, but I think it serves us well.
We have an indication.
I think it serves us well that the Prime Minister holds the finance portfolio. I'll be very blunt about that.
Okay, I thought so too. All right. Thank you so much, Governor. Ms. Edwards, let me ask you on this one. And by the way, another round of applause for Mrs. Edwards, who's serving as the longest serving woman on the board, on the bank's board. In that unique position, Mrs. Edwards, was there ever a time when you can recall while you were sitting in those meetings that there were doubts surrounding the current CPEG and whether the ECU should stick with it? Was there a time when people started to think, to rethink this? Do you remember anything like that?
The answer is yes, but mostly from the outside. So we have had very strong recommendations that we should move away from the PEG and move to a more flexible exchange rate regime. Our experience is that it worked for us. The truth is that the PEG is not set and allowed to remain on its own. And that will probably be said a few times this evening. It is underpinned by strong technical work. The assessment is done. The board is advised. The Monetary Council is advised. So that it is not a matter of keeping the PEG where it is, but ensuring that the work is done and to make sure that that PEG remains relevant to the region. And if there are areas of adjustment that are required to maintain that PEG, that support is also given. Because that's a role that the central bank has played as well. Support for fiscal policy that would help balance the monetary policy that ensures that the PEG remains as it is. Again, the 3 words, predictability, stability, collaboration. And generally, the 8 countries sitting on the board and sitting on the Monetary Council, with the necessary guidance, has ensured that that remained as it is until now.
You know, I'm very curious and very inquisitive. I wouldn't have been a journalist if I hadn't been. I'm just interested, which sectors was that situation coming from, where they were wanting the peg to be removed and going towards a more flexible arrangement? I'm asking because I know some of the audience telepathically, that's what they're thinking too.
Generally, the central bank and the ECCU member states, they have strong partners other than this institution. So the central bank will liaise with other central banks, with the multilateral corporations, individual countries as well. They belong to other organizations. And so from time to time, those recommendations will come. Most times, a recommendation is made regarding moving from the fixed regime to a more flexible regime. It's usually related to issues of competitiveness, whether the region is a high-priced area because of the peg. And I think so far the assessment has shown that is not necessarily the case. And in fact, the peg has encouraged investments in the region because of the stability and the predictability.
That's an extraordinarily powerful point. We're going to get to more details on that to the panel as well. So is it the IMF who was asking for this thing?
I didn't say that.
No, just checking. Okay, all right. Let me get to extraordinary. Let me ask Ms. Antoine, the youth advocate on our panel, because the voice of the youth is crucially important. They say youth is wasted on the young, but Ms. Antoine is proving that herself and her peers are absolutely belying that, and they're showing that this is about the youth voice, taking the youth voice into consideration on this. Do you think, Ms. Antoine, that the youth fully appreciate the value of the peg, and do you think that there's a risk that they might take it for granted?
Let me first start off by saying good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. Yes, largely. However, it's not something that we do consciously, I would say. It's not that we don't care. It's because of how great, I would say, the peg has worked. It has this silent stability, that we don't even think about, hey, I'll put this in my Shein cart today, tomorrow it's another price. No. Or my Shein cart is 100 US today, and I have the 100 US in EC today, but tomorrow I have to pay more in EC. No, we don't think about that. We just know we put that 15 item in our Shein cart and we can get it for the same price tomorrow. Yeah. So yes, in a sense, we have taken it for granted because we're not really speaking about it. Well, that's just me. Yes.
That's very revealing about the Shein purchases, right? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That's powerful. That's very practical, a practical example of it. It is said that, Governor, as you're drinking your water, it is said that, somebody was presented with this option. They presented a glass to them, half empty, and they said, let's see, is it half empty or half full? You know this thing about whether you're a pessimist or an optimist. And the person said, well, I'll just drink the water because I'm a problem solver. So I suppose this is the case here in relation to Shein. I mean, this purchasing Shein, practical examples of this. Governor, let me come back to you in terms of the bank's role. And again, I don't think that the bank gets enough credit across the ECCU. People sometimes think that the bank's work is abstract, it's above their heads. They can't read, for example, some of your financial reports, and because they're not, they kind of just bypass it. It's for governor and economists and so on to focus on it, and they don't understand how the bank plays a crucial role in their own everyday lives. The bank's role in keeping the peg. Just talk to us about that, please.
So it's thanks very much, Mr. Antoine, for sharing that. Because the truth is that the peg is really an invisible piece of economic infrastructure. It's like a bridge. So if you think about roads, bridges, they connect us physically. The peg, which is our monetary stability arrangement, connects all of us, all our 8 islands, our countries, economically. So it's unseen, said silent, but it's powerful. And it's a platform on which we do everyday economic activity without recognizing it. Now it is our job at the central bank to make sure it stays that way. So our team works every day, Niall and the team in BMOD, led by Raquel, on investment of our reserves. We do so internally, and we have some international money managers that we work with as well. That helps to ensure we follow our policies and that we implement those things, notwithstanding the ups and downs of the cycle. And that is why the Deputy Governor mentioned, notwithstanding what the law says about where the reserve should be, that is something that we maintain at a very high level. And there are those who have criticized us and said that we're too conservative, you're holding too many reserves. And we've always made the point that these reserves serve as an insurance policy, a buffer in times of stress, shocks, storms. And that is why today we could celebrate 50 years of stability. So our job, among many other things that we do, but in relation to the PEG, is to ensure that we invest in those reserves, we invest those reserves prudently, and that they generate a return, and that we back them, and that we do not, under any circumstances, overlend to governments.
Even if there's pressure.
There is always pressure on governments, on governments to spend, to do things. Every country has a budget constraint. Even the United States, the largest, most wealthy economy in the world. I have to tell you where the debt is at the moment. So the point is, we have to manage within that reality. And that is what our central bank does on a daily basis. So it's unseen, it's unsung, but it is vital work because it's that economic bridge, that invisible piece of economic infrastructure that connects us and allows us to operate our economies without even thinking about it.
Absolutely, and allows Ulrika to purchase on Shein. I think that deserves, in terms of the governor and his team, deputy governor, the entire members of the team. You said, which name you called in terms of?
So
Raquel?
I call a couple of guys. Raquel, who is the director of BMOD, which is where the investment unit is, the head of investment, Niall Pistana, and a number of them. The investment unit members, if you're in the room, please stand.
Excellent. And a round of applause, please, for members of the team. Excellent. Very good.
Niall Pistana, Cyprian Forsyth, Raquel Leons.
Very good, very good. I wish I could negotiate a salary increase for you, but I'm not that powerful. All right, but great work to everyone indeed involved. Let me go back to Dr. Samuel on this, because crucially important. Governor mentioned some of the stresses and the shocks, the external shocks that impact the currency union as small open economies. Dr. Samuel, in your view, so we've had oil shocks over the past 50 years. We've had natural disasters. I mean, almost every island nation in the sub-region has had a hurricane or volcano, possibly in some cases. There have been global financial crises. Not just the 2008 one, but even before that, the COVID-19 pandemic, once in a century situation in terms of a global pandemic. What do you consider to be the biggest shock and test for the currency peg over the past 50 years?
Well, I can add some others to the ones that you mentioned. And basically, there's been a significant level of resilience for these economies. The withdrawal of the preferences for bananas, which when you were going through that, it felt like it was going to be the end of the world, but it wasn't. These economies have shown a significant amount of resilience. But for me, I think the COVID is probably the most significant. The reason is that this was a situation that cut across all the countries at the same time. And at the same time, so that it brought the countries to a stop. Foreign exchange earnings almost went to zero. There was the supply chains, the disruptions that meant that in some situations there were issues related to whether you would be able to feed the country. And there was also a significant amount of expenditure to get PPEs and vaccines and so on. So that was something that was broad-based. The others, when you have a hurricane, it hit 2 or 3 countries, but the rest remain. And because of the way that the system is, when that happens, you have the reserve coverage from the other countries that are earning that helps you to get along. Things like the oil crisis, you weathered that, and when tourism wasn't doing well, the countries that were doing agriculture were doing better. So in a sense, there was always that balancing. In COVID, everything went down. So in a sense, I think that COVID would have been, for me, the worst of the shocks. And coming out of that, what it shows is that these countries are very, very resilient. These economies bounce back very quickly. Absolutely. So after doing all of that, we are still back with the high levels of reserves, and growth growth is resuming again. And this geopolitical crisis that is going on, we would weather that too.
All right. Good, very, very good consummate confidence there from Dr. Samuel. I think sometimes we beat upon ourselves in the region, but I think this one can be something that we can absolutely be immensely proud of for the work that has been done at various levels. Mrs. Edwards, back to you on this. As, again, from a unique position that you've served on the board for such a long time, what's an achievement over the past 50 years that gives you the most pride, and one that you think could serve as a lesson for future leaders and future policymakers in the ECCU?
There are several. I remember that at some point in the formation of the European Union, there was a team visiting here to understand what was happening at this central bank, to influence what they were going to do. For me, that was a moment of great pride. We always feel that we learn the lessons from everyone else. But here was something we had done, and done well enough, that somebody else felt that they could study it. Whatever they did, whether they copied or used or whatever, but they felt it was important that they studied it. So I mark that as one of the very proud moments. And then there is the agility within the central bank that I think has to be commended. Again, some reference has been made to it. One can imagine what happens after a storm, and the ability of the central bank system to jump in, using some of those fiscal tranches and other special facilities that are there to support countries for immediate recovery. I think that is also important because it gets right to the heart of where you want it to, the citizens of that particular state. And at some point or another, every country has been affected by some kind of natural disasters. Then there is the issue of leadership that comes from this organization, I mean, not just the administration, but the council and the board as well. And I can think of 2008, when we all thought the failures of BICO and CLICO would diminish our entire economies because those were so dominant in the ECCU. And in my mind, it was the leadership of the central bank, the entire mechanism, that allowed us to minimize that impact to the extent that at least there was some recovery for some of our citizens. So there are many, but what stands out in each case is that we did not stop and allow the situation to dominate us, but we worked collaboratively. I don't know how many meetings we would have had just to deal with these issues, but they were necessary and there was an end goal, and that is we were working together to resolve matters that would benefit each of us.
Excellent, excellent. I think that deserves a round of applause as well. Brilliant, brilliant. We're going to be transitioning shortly to the questions, Governor, so we'll probably take about another, if organizers agree, about another 5 more minutes on this section, then we go to question and answer. By the way, it is fantastic that we have such a wide representation on the panel and in the audience across the currency union. Grenada, St. Vincent of the Grenadines, Dominica, St. Lucia, and of course, Deputy Governor, Dominica. I mean, fantastic, right? Right across. Antigua, Barbuda. I just didn't want to. Modesty, see, modesty. So that's 5 more, Deputy Governor. 5 more questions. We have members who are joining us, of course, virtually, including from Antigua, Barbuda, and as I said, right across the region. Let me just very quickly, Governor, does the PEG bring the same level of benefits across all the 8 island nations of the ECCU, or is it a little bit different based on the structure of their economies?
So, I mean, structurally, we have some currencies or some countries that are more tourism dependent than others. So, there's Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, for example. You know, but of course, all of us are in tourism. But I think what happens is that it's a pool. So, we bring in reserves through our tourism, agriculture, whatever it is we have. In the case of Grenada, it would be St. George University, for example, in addition to tourism and agriculture. And combined, we're able to bring that in. So on any given period, some may be contributing more. But then in another scenario or season, they will rely on the pool when they're going through a difficult time. It's a point that Dr. Samuel was making earlier. That's the beauty of this arrangement. We pool our reserves. SUSU, Credit Union, Partner Hand, we pool our reserves.
Box hand.
There you go. There you go. And that has worked well for us. So what we do when it comes to profit sharing, we have a formula based on the size of economies that we use in addition to a base. So we give everybody a base figure, $1 million, and then on top of that is the GDP, nominal GDP. That's the basis on which we distribute our profits. So you get, in a sense, in relation to your contribution to the pool.
Excellent. So everybody gets a draw, right?
Everybody gets a draw.
Okay. Nobody gets a bigger hand and then say, well, sorry, our economy is bigger. Very good. Thank you so much, Governor. Let me get to the youth advocate again, Ms. Antoine. Young people, how can they shape the future competitiveness and strength of the ECCU and the EC dollar peg? The role of young people in the future, because we are also charting the course for the future, right?
No problem. So 3 things. I mentioned the PEG means a foundation to me, so building, not waiting. So we're starting off with youth and sports councils, the national youth councils, educating our young persons on what exactly the PEG is, how can they contribute to it. Also by being in spaces where we could share spaces like this, where we could share our views on how to take this PEG forward, how to build on it, not just leave it at the place it is right now. Also, I've seen a lot of young persons starting to engage in trading, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and buying and selling a lot of gold online. So getting more young persons educated on how to trade properly is a way that we could push the PEG forward, because we have a lot of persons doing it and they don't have the right skills, or yes, they learn it, they know how to do it online, but they could actually get certification in it. And that's one of the things the youth councils can do to assist young persons, let them become entrepreneurs, make their own money, so they don't have to always depend on private sectors or government agencies for an income, basically. Excellent.
So it's not just young people are investing, trading, and investing not just on Shein. Excellent. We like that. We like that. 2 more questions, and then we go to the audience. Of course, both the audience in person and also online. One of them to Governor, in relation to, now we're in, as I said, the 4th Industrial Revolution, going to the 5th Industrial Revolution. It's extraordinary how technology has been changing over the past 50 years, right? I mean, we've lived through so much change. I mean, perhaps even more than the last 1,000 years. So over the past 50 years, we've probably seen more change as a human species than in the past 1,000 years. So we've had fintech, Governor, we've had artificial intelligence, digital currencies. In fact, there is a digital currency, the digital EC dollar. how can we now balance, how can the bank balance ensuring that there is innovation while at the same time not sacrificing the stability of the EC dollar?
Yeah, so sometimes people see these things as competing objectives. I do not share that view. I think they can be mutually reinforcing. And my own view is that we have to use innovation to reinforce stability. So, for example, a simple example, when we did the polymer with additional security, enhanced security features, including for the visually impaired, that was an innovation. It was also an attempt to protect the currency while helping a particular section of our society that are challenged. So that's an example of good innovation working for the people. Our Dcash is another example with lessons which we will draw on as we move into our new arrangements for payments modernization in the currency union. Even look at the Green Harbor campus that you drove in, you'd have seen also now. Again, so I think there's a way for us to do it. Like everything else, with artificial intelligence, they provide tremendous opportunities for us with respect to financial inclusion, even financial sector supervision, or we do research in the bank and all of that. Fundamentally, though, we always have to make sure when we do innovation, which we should, and which we've demonstrated as a central bank we do, that we also have the appropriate safeguards. So that includes cybersecurity, consumer protection, appropriate governance. So what I would say is that yes to innovation, and then we must make sure that innovation is used to enhance confidence in our currency. And I think that's what we're doing, and that's what we will continue to do. But innovation must come. So essentially, technologies will change. Trust does not change. We have to always preserve the trust. And that is what we keep in mind as we do our innovation.
Yeah, so trust is the North Star. Thank you so much, Governor. Let me ask you, let me stay with Governor on this one. Do you foresee a time when the EC dollar will no longer be pegged to the US, but another currency? There are other currencies which are rising. There's talk about a BRICS currency. There's talk about even cryptocurrency and so on, digital currency, stable coins. Is there a time, because of course it had been pegged to the British pound before, then to the US dollar, possibly a time within the next 50 years when the peg might move to another currency?
Well, I don't know the future. What I do know is that this currency arrangement has worked very well for us. And I have every confidence that we successfully navigate the future based on what we've done so far. So there's a lot of discussion now around the hegemony of the US dollar and its place in global economy and global trade. As a central bank, we monitor those things on an ongoing basis. So we look at, for example, central bank reserves in US dollars globally. What's the trend? We look at foreign exchange transactions in US dollars. At the moment, it's 9 in 10. 9 of every 10 transactions is in US dollars. We look at trade invoicing in US dollars. So for all the talk, the US dollar remains the very dominant global reserve currency, and that is not changing anytime soon. Yes, I understand some people are buying gold and doing more gold. For us as a currency union, although gold is allowed in our investment policy, people have to remember, while it can be a hedge against inflation, it does not generate income. And as a currency union, we have to generate income. That's how we take care of our bills around here, and that's how we pay profits. So we have to be very mindful of what we are, who we are, and how we operate. There are discussions every now and then about basket of currencies that could potentially be used, whether that's the euro, whether that's pound sterling, the Canadian dollar, the Chinese one. But the truth is, the US dollar, where is the oil priced in? US dollars. Where is trade invoiced in? US dollars. Where is the debt in our countries? 85% of our debt in the currency union, in our members, are denominated in US dollars. 85%. When you go on Amazon and you have to pay,
and
Shein, you need US dollars. So there's a practical reality here. If the US is our major trading partner, when you want to buy stuff as a business or as an individual, you need US dollars. So you have to hold US dollars. That's why our central bank has to make sure we have adequate supplies of US dollars. And if the bank doesn't have, then the bank comes to the central bank. And we have, and we must always have, to be able to supply them. So I don't see in the foreseeable future any shift of the peg, to answer your question very directly, but we continue to monitor the global economy and global developments, and we stay abreast, and we report on that on an ongoing basis. So next week when we have Monetary Council, the Council will get an update on what the global trend is, because we always have a dashboard showing that. We showed our board that 2 weeks ago.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. We'll monitor that very closely. Very good. The central bank has its finger on the pulse, right? Very, very good to hear that. Let me just ask, and I'll ask you, panelists, to just give, if you can keep your responses to a minute, because we want to go to the audience as well. So this last question for you, starting with youth representative all the way up. In terms of what opportunities, as we look ahead, climate change, demographic shifts, technological advances, evolving global markets, what opportunities do you think the ECCU should seize over the next decade to strengthen resilience, boost productivity, and to improve the prosperity? Because ultimately that's where the rubber hits the road, prosperity for the citizens of the ECCU. What opportunities, one or two, that you think should be seized over the next decade or so?
So to start off, it would be, well, it's no secret that the youth is the future. So I think it would be that we first start educating our young people on what exactly the PEG is, how it works, and how they can be involved in the future of the PEG. Yes, that's it for that.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, just educating the young people.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. Mrs. Edwards, in terms of the opportunities that should be seized over the next decade or so, boosting productivity?
Broadly, growth and development, and that could mean a combination of things. We've seen some progress, agriculture in some economies, renewable energy in others, growth in tourism. So wherever a country chooses to focus, growth and development. I was happy to see the launch of the most recent strategic plan for the central bank, and I think it captures the essence of some of the key areas I think we can focus on over the next or the foreseeable future, and targeting those to support the financial sector.
Yeah, so possibly the blue and green economy and so on would be huge in that. Excellent. Thank you so much, Mrs. Edwards. And Dr. Samuel?
So I have three for you.
Okay, well.
Innovate, innovate, innovate.
Okay, good.
You see, the thing is that when we look at the trend in productivity for the region, it has been on a downward trend over the last 20, 30 years. And what we need to do is to reverse that trend, is to embrace innovation. We have to embrace the digital economy, and in order to do that, as the youth representative said, we have to educate our youth in digital skills, give them the digital skills so that they can participate in this global digital economy. We also have to provide the digital telecommunications infrastructure that would allow them, that would allow our youths to use their creativity, become entrepreneurs in the digital economy to ensure that we do better. And I think that would be my contribution for that. Innovate. Or we die.
All right, innovate. Remember the term export or die? Export or perish? Well, Dr. Samuel is saying innovate or perish. Governor Antoine, I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm going to ask you this last question. See, you're planning for that, but I'm going to give you a curveball now. not so much a curveball. But in terms of, so for those who are watching, especially for those who are watching online, we've had a fixed exchange rate, 2.7 to 1 for the past 50 years. Let's talk about an alternative reality. Had it been a floating exchange rate, what would it have meant for businesses and citizens across the OECS?
Well, you don't want to hear about that. You do. Because, no, when on occasion we've been challenged about whether the exchange rate is overvalued, which essentially means devalue, we've always made it lucidly clear. In these small economies, hyper-open economies, which are price takers, all that would happen is that prices would go up. So if we think price is high now, you ain't see anything yet. They'll be so much higher because imports would go up, We import most of what we consume. And we have very little exports. The main export is tourism. And that is a challenge because of our small size to compete with Mexico or some of the other parts of the world. We're beautiful, but we are in a global economy, a competitive global economy. So the truth of the matter is that, could you imagine each country having their own central bank? What that would mean? Could you imagine? That's the alternative to what we have now. You know? Could you imagine where would we be without this central bank? And without us coming together as we have for the last 50 years in this peg and 43 years as a central bank? Where would we be? A flexible exchange rate? Do you see what's going on around the world in countries far larger than us with flexing? Look at what's going on with the Middle East right now with the war. And how that has impacted the debt of these countries, how that has impacted the deficits, how that has impacted the access to the markets, because they are flexible regimes. When you go to some countries and your inflation is 32% and 50% and 100 and something percent, and they can't print money because they have $1,000 bill and $10,000 bill and $20,000 bill just to keep up with inflation. And you go in the supermarket today and the bread was $10 and tomorrow is $20. And Sheen, that alternative universe we don't want to know. It will be terrible. Terrible for this currency union. We made the right choice, and we must stick with it and make sure it continues to work for us. It is serving us well.
So if there were doubters, let Governor Antoine's position make it pellucidly clear the right decision was taken, and otherwise it would have been a dystopian situation, Governor says, for the ECCU. Thank you so much. A round of applause for all the panelists, please. A little bit behind in time, but let me get, so now we can open the floor for questions, comments. Don't rush all to the 3 microphones at one time, please. Just raise your hand and we will ask you to go to either the microphone on the sides or the one in the middle. And we'll also have reactions or questions, comments from those of us joining, for those of you individuals joining us on Zoom as well. So questions, just raise your hand, please. And for any one of our panelists. Okay, questions. We'll also have on Zoom. I mean, the panelists were so comprehensive. No questions. So, yes, very good. We have the first question. Please, to the microphone, please. Good evening. I think the microphone, let's try to get the microphone on. Yes. Perfect, thanks. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick one. Dr. Salmon and Governor, how do you respond to calls, for example, from Dr. Delilah Warrell, whom I know you are familiar with, for the dollarization of the ECCU and Barbados, for example? I mean, of course, he's written several articles, several publications in making the argument that we should abandon our individual currencies and move towards dollarization. So just your thoughts on that quickly.
Thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it, Governor.
Okay, so my point is very simple. That you use the US dollar, all of the big word for it is seigniorage. Which is the difference between the value in printing the dollar. That is the cost of printing the dollar and the value that it brings. So that you see, if it costs 15 cents to print a US dollar and a US dollar, then the seigniorage is basically the difference between that. And once you choose to do that, all of that seigniorage goes to the Federal Reserve, and if we continue using the EC dollar, at least some of it stays with us, and that is what part of the profits comes from. So my sense is that we ought not to give Uncle Sam more money than he already has.
Uncle Sam is already good. Yes, go.
Yeah, no, so I would just say I have a lot of regard for Dr. Worrell, but he likes to be provocative. That's his nature. And as Dr. Simon said, this situation is working for us. We invest in the U.S. Markets, most of our foreign reserves, we generate income. So as we speak, we have $2 billion in the U.S. markets, which is generating income for us. That works for us. It gives us some control over some of our policies, as opposed to a dollarized economy where you cede all the control, the senior wage, as Dr. Samuel said, and then we now have to find different ways to generate income. So it makes sense for us. And the question is it working or not for this currency union? In another country, they'd have to decide if it's the thing not working, then they have to go. If it's not broke, that's the point. So we in fairness, and out of respect, and I think, we have to acknowledge that the people who've come before us and those who now serve this generation has honored what we found, preserved it, built it, and we have to continue to leverage it. I don't think it's a wise idea to tear it down.
Yeah. All right. So if it is, Governor is suggesting, and Dr. Samuel, that if it is necessary not to change, it is necessary not to change. So let's see. All right. We'll monitor that. Any more questions? And to the audience, questions. We'll also try to get, there's a Facebook question. If our economy, from Jamil Wilson, if our economy is stable and able to maintain its rate at 270 to 1 US, why isn't it closer to the dollar? The dollar has drastically declined since the inception of the $2.70 rate. Governor, you want to take that one?
So, the issue really is about competitiveness. At the end of the day, what are we competing on? The only thing we have is tourism. That's our global sector. That's a sector we compete in. We do one or two other things, but that's the main one. And so we have to understand what we bring in terms of productivity to this enterprise. Dr. Samuel made a point earlier that, and he was modest. I remember reading one of your papers several years ago where you spoke to this issue and you showed that over the last 3 decades, productivity had been on a decline. And unfortunately, tourism, for all of its utility in our economies, is a relatively low productivity sector. And part of the big push, this drive to really grow our economies faster and to double and so on, requires us to raise our level of productivity. So it goes back to his innovation. So the issue is not revaluing the currency to get us there. It is raising our productivity and bringing new sectors to the table through, as he mentioned, digital transformation, for example, or food and nutrition security. All of those 7 areas in the big push. Those are the things we have to focus on to make us more productive, to make us more competitive, to make us more resilient. The fact of the matter, because we are on this campus and we've invested in solar PV with battery storage, the price of oil is not going to affect us in a significant way on this campus. That's resilience. That's what this investment does. In addition to the fact that it's saving $2 million a year because of what we did.
Please pause with applause. You can go ahead. Applause, yes, absolutely.
So I make the point to say concrete actions must be taken in specific sectors to boost our economies. Tinkering with the exchange rate to do that will not give us what this person, I think, is trying to look for. At the end of the day, our tourism will not be... Take electricity, for example. Electricity prices are some of the highest in the Western Hemisphere, 30 to 40 US cents per kilowatt hour. Our hotel rooms, we are competing against Mexico, for example, where it's a fraction of the price. Those are the things we have to address to make us more competitive, to bring more tourists, and not just to bring more tourists, but again, higher spend out of the dollar. Because I make the point, we are chasing our rivals. What we need to be doing is boosting expenditure. How much they actually spend when they come here. That is what needs to change. Because when you look at our competitive position vis-a-vis the Pacific and other parts of the world, tourists are spending less on average in the ECCU, in the Caribbean, than they spend in other parts of the world. Those are the things that matter. Those are the things that we have to address. And if you take a look at the big push, these sectors are in there, including tourism.
Okay, so not trying to bring the currency to 2 to 1, right? All right, thank you, Governor. Here's another there's a YouTube question now. To the Governor, how does the ECSM encourage more retail investors in the equity and bond markets? This will be very important to help achieve the big push, as you just mentioned. So how does the ECSM encourage more retail investors in the equity and bond market?
Right, so the ECSM is Eastern Caribbean Securities Market. I see we have the new CEO of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, Stuart Haynes, sitting right there. And of course, next to him is the CEO of the Eastern Caribbean Home Mortgage Bank, or ECHMB Capital.
Excellent.
So those are the key leaders. So look for them. They're responsible.
We're going to get some interviews with them.
No, just to say quickly, the government last year started, on the recommendation of the central bank, a push pilot with a retail bond in Grenada, where we dropped the threshold from $5,000 to $500 to make it easier for people to invest. And that first one, I think it was 4.25% or 4.5%. They've already paid their first coupon and so on. So what we've done of late is to make it easier and to protect, to carve out a space where small, what we call retail investors, can access the market. Because what was happening before is that when you looked at who is investing, 98.5% of them were institutional investors. Insurance companies, social security, credit unions, and so on. But the small man, woman, were not getting enough opportunities. So we lowered the threshold. In addition to that, 2 mutual funds have come in the last 2 years, right? And the access threshold is 100 US. So again, it's an opportunity now for people to get involved in the market, because we're encouraging wealth creation. Remember, savings is a starting point, it's not an ending point. Savings, then you go to investing. Why it is that only 1 in 25 persons, 4%, are invested in the securities market in the currency union. In the United States, it's 3 in 5, 60%. So we have to shift that, and we believe that those are opportunities to generate income and wealth that we're not tapping and that we need to tap. So the good news is that our governments have moved, and there's an opportunity. St. Kitts and Nevis is up next with their retail bond. Others are going to come. I think Antigua and Barbuda wants to do this year as well, and other countries will come on stream. So you will have an opportunity to be able to invest at the retail level.
Excellent. Excellent. So those who are interested in the bond and equity markets. Here's another question on YouTube. I'm going to ask Dr. Samuel and Mrs. Edwards to take this one. Considering that each ECCU member is a sovereign state, of course, except for the British Overseas Territories, what safeguards exist to ensure that unilateral fiscal or economic decisions by one member do not undermine the stability of the EC dollar peg? I want to take that, Dr. Samuel, starting with you and then Mrs. Edwards.
So that's an excellent question, and it speaks to the point that I was raising earlier regarding the free rider problem. So that because of the way that the currency board, quasi-currency board is structured, some countries can go ahead and be profligate in terms of their fiscal policy, but it does not affect them immediately because you have the coverage from the rest of the region, both in terms of the reserves and the fact that you don't get punished immediately with higher inflation because of the greater stability. And the issue there has to do with how governments have chosen in the past to treat with this. And one of the things that they have done is to say, okay, we understand that if we are if our fiscal becomes unsustainable, then our debt balloons, and that can crash the currency. And what countries have chosen to do is to say, okay, we are going to have a debt target for the region, and all of us are going to try to meet that target to get our debt down to 60% of GDP, and in all of the other occasions, ministers of finance have acted in that way. That let us try to do what is necessary to preserve what we have. And so while there aren't any rules or penalties for not following the rules, it depends on the minister sitting in the Monetary Council to say let us work for the region, so that while there are no rules or penalties, it depends on the and the persuasive power of the governor of the central bank to say, look, what you're doing is out of line. Let us stick to the rules.
And he's been very persuasive, I might add. Very, very good on that. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuels. So it does appear that so far, fiscal responsibility and maturity have worked in our favor. Mrs. Edwards, over to you.
Yes, so I totally agree. And what is one step beyond the target that is set. So in this region, we've agreed for 60% debt to GDP ratio. Some other regions and countries choose other targets. Individual countries now, since these are the same ministers who have committed to that target or committed their countries to that target, puts that into practice in their fiscal management. So at most, I'll use the word fiscal rules or whatever it is they call them. They set their own internal guidance. So if you listen to most budgets from most countries, they will tell you what targets that they are planning to achieve for that year. These are not chosen in isolation. They are chosen as a means of maintaining that commitment they made at the regional level.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Mrs. Edwards. Here's another question, which I'll ask the governor to respond to, please. How will it affect us if the US dollar lost its place as the world reserve currency? You touched on this before, but just in relation to that question.
The question has been asked again, and the position is that we continue to monitor the situation very closely. If we have any sense of a likely change of the global reserve currency, then we would reposition. And we know what that could look like. But the reality is that when you look at the reserve currencies, the contenders, they would be the euro, Chinese yuan, and none of these currencies are anywhere near to being a reserve currency at this point in time. So it is a hypothetical question. It's a fair one in the context of what's going on in the global economy. But at this juncture, we continue to do our due diligence, as I indicated, monitor reports, and we have, a contingency arrangement if we felt that there was a need to make a shift. As we speak, there is no need, and therefore there is no recommendation to that effect.
Excellent. Thank you, Governor. I have to get to one other question. We're wrapping up in another 3 minutes or so for the question and answer segment. I really need one other question from in the audience. One other. Let's see, going once, going twice. We might have a prize for those who ask a question inside the audience. Right. Let's do that. One more. Yes, please. Thank you. To the microphone. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Good evening. I suppose the mic is close to me, so
there you go. Thank you.
It might be a sensitive one. In terms of the CARICOM integration on one economy, how would that affect the stability of our EC dollar if we were to bring in all our lovely brothers and sisters from across the region whose, currencies are very, in some instances, unstable. The disparity to the US dollar is very volatile. And how and what guardrails do we have in place if CARICOM was actually to realize its mission eventually? And how would it affect our central bank and us as a ECCU?
So,
thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
I see Giselle is pointing to me, but I want to start with the CARICOM man, who was also Senior Director of Research at the Central Bank. I'll make a comment after you end.
that was a very neat just hand off to Dr. Samuel.
Well, that is good.
Yes.
So what you're talking about is an issue that we went through, I think, when I just joined the central bank, where there was the talk of a CARICOM currency, a single currency for the entire region, the move towards convergence and so. And there was a lot of discussion at that time as to how do we establish a common currency for the region. And I think the point that the ECCB took at that point is that we can have a common currency for the region, but it has to be along the same rules that we have established as the central bank and the EC dollar, because that has worked for us. And we are not going to be moving into a new currency arrangement where we have to worry tomorrow what the exchange rate is going to be, or whether there can be whether it's going to be stable. So in a sense, I think that question was asked and answered at that time, but I want to give you the answer again, that it would be folly for us to go into a new currency arrangement that is any less secure than the one we have now.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Salmon.
Thank you. So I'm glad you answered, and I knew you had done that research. So let me say no, to add my last piece to what you said, is that there's absolutely no discussion at the level of CARICOM Central Bank governance to do that. So that, as Wendell said, Dr. Simon said, that question has been asked and answered, and we moved on. What we are doing, which is what I want to add, is that we are working on a CARICOM payment and settlement system, CAPS, which is going to be the ability for us to pay in local currencies and behind the scenes among central banks net in US dollars. So for business people, that potentially will help, including countries and persons who have challenges raising foreign exchange. Remember, we do not have foreign exchange controls in the currency union, but there are countries in CARICOM that do have foreign exchange controls. So the idea of this payment settlement system is for us to be able to cross-border payments in local currencies in real time, and then so you have less need for foreign exchange upfront. And then at the end of the day, the central bank's net in USD. That is what we're working on now. As we speak, we have two members of our team in Egypt as part of a study tour, as we've launched this project, looking at PAPS, the Pan-African Settlement System, and we're going to take some lessons from there, and we'll run the pilot for about a year, and then we'll be able to report results. So our hope, to your question, and for those who don't know, the person who posed the question is a former president of St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Commerce. She's a businesswoman. That is how we think we could help support businesses and trade within CARICOM. And that is what we're doing as a practical measure right now. Not currencies, but trade and payments.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we had perfect gender parity in relation to the audience questions, male and female. Very, very good. Anybody want to break the tie? One more question from inside the audience before we wrap. One more. Let's see. Go. Yes, perfecto. Thank you. As ever, the women are doing better than men. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Over to you.
All right. Good evening. Thanks so much to the panelists. The discussions have been very interesting. I have a little question for Miss Antoine. I'm wondering, as a young person, what do you think we can do as a region to get the younger generation to fill their carts with local products rather than just fill it up with sheep? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great question. Great question. Ms. Antoine.
Great question indeed. That one is going to be a very hard one to answer, because when you say local products, is it like crafts that people make just local? Okay, we also have some local designers. They make clothes, and I know on Shein we buy a lot of clothes, shoes, jewelry, you know, a whole set of things. Okay. So, it depends on how the person sells their product. Because in St. Lucia, we have a young girl that's trying to create grills, and that's not something that we see in the region, basically, a young person creating grills. No, we don't see that. So that's how you get the young people. We normally follow trends that we see on TikTok, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or it's a bad thing either, but we follow the trends we see on TikTok, and we see these famous TikTokers wearing grills, both gold and silver, and that is what attracts the young people. So it all depends on how you sell it and what you sell as well. So take for example, I don't think a young person would, well, not saying that they shouldn't, but I don't think they would go to a store and say, okay, let me buy a Madras dress. No. If they see a little shorts, they'll say, okay, let me buy that. And that's not a good thing. No, the Madras is our culture. But if you take that Madras dress and you create it in a style, let's see a dress I have on right now, you take the Madras and you create a dress like that, yes, I think the young people will buy that. So it's all about how we sell it. Yes, so innovation and creativity.
Excellent. Excellent. Innovation married with creativity and, of course, business. So there you go. That's a possible. So can we create a kind of sub-regional Shein? Like a version of Shein in the sub-region. That's an opportunity. So that's where we could get the young people to. And have a nexus with TikTok. Yeah, because they're into TikTok. Good. You notice how she qualified her responses? Not saying that's a good thing. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Miss Antoine. All right. So I think that thank you so much for your questions. Really great, both online and in the audience. Let me just get final comments now from our panelists, starting with you, Miss Antoine, and then Mrs. Edwards, then Dr. Samuel, then Governor Antoine. Please, in a minute, please, for the panelists. 1 minute. Closing comments.
No problem. Just to close off, thank you so much, ECCB, for organizing this. I do believe that, organizations like the ECCB need to include young persons in the conversations, important conversations. So thank you so much for that. It was a great experience, and what I learned here today, I will definitely be taking it over to my team members in St. Lucia. So thank you for the opportunity, and have a good night, everyone.
Mrs. Edwards, please. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mrs. Edwards.
Institutions are created for the benefit of the people who they serve. And the ECCB was created to serve the citizens of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. And the success of the ECCB will be measured by how its policies and its programs and its strategies and everything that is ECCB does impacts on the lives of ECCU citizens. And if we stay focused on that, I think there will be a greater understanding of what the bank does, and that all people will recognize and make better use of the services that the bank provides, whether it's in not just the banking, but the stability that it brings, the information that is shared, the opportunities that are provided for discussion, as is this one, all of the growth discussions that have been taking place. So there are a lot of opportunities I think our citizens can derive, and I would encourage the bank to continue to stay focused on delivering for the people of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Edwards. Dr. Samuel?
Well, I want to finish where I started, this issue of community. I think that is going to be the key thing that happens going forward. This arrangement has lasted 50 years. It wasn't guaranteed in the beginning, and it's not guaranteed now. It requires that all of us, including the members of the Board of Directors, the Monetary Council, to continue to work at making this union more perfect. And in doing so, we want to ensure that we bring the young people along. We want to create the environment, the digital environment where the young people can be entrepreneurs in their own right, not depending on TikTok, but creating their own content, and also to use their creativity to increase the productivity of these economies, and also to diversify the economy away from the tourism and agriculture. We need to move further into the creative industries, and the digital platform is probably where we can compete with the rest of the world.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel. Really appreciate it. Dr. Samuel, harkening back to some U.S. presidents when they're delivering their State of the Union addresses, saying the state of our union is strong, but we continue to work for a more perfect union. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel. Governor Antoine.
Indeed. I think we, at this juncture, should be justifiably proud of what we've accomplished as a currency union, but there's no place for complacency. And as I said earlier, stability is not a destination. We must now, the founders and framers handed us an arrangement that has worked well for us for the last 50 years. It is now for us to leverage this stability to propel us to even higher heights. And this is where the big push comes in. So by the way, I hope our youth parliaments will debate the big push and add your voice to advocacy of this important framework for how we advance our currency union. Because now we're looking at the next 10 years and beyond, the next 50. I believe if we do, we can succeed. Better jobs, higher incomes, more opportunities, more resilient, and a rising prosperity for all. And at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. We exist. The mission of this bank is to advance the good of the people of our currency union, where they do not simply strive, but thrive. That is our commitment, and that is what I want everybody to join in common endeavor, community, to get us to do just that. Professor Robinson said it, nobody's coming to save us. He's right. That's what the big push is. We do for ourselves what we must do for ourselves. 50 years ago, the founders and framers saw an opportunity. And the lesson there is that, notwithstanding our small size, we have the capacity to craft arrangements that work for us when we come together. That's what we've done here. And that is what we must continue to do as we navigate a dangerous and difficult global environment. So that's what we must do.
Thank you so much, Governor. One of the highlights of the night from Governor is we made the right choice 50 years ago. And his leadership has been exemplary as the third governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And something that, because I was going quickly earlier, we did not mention, but Governor Antoine was awarded for exceptional contribution to finance, and also Global Markets named him Central Bank Governor of the Year a few years ago. Heartiest congratulations to Governor Antoine. So we thank our distinguished panel. As I said, one of the greatest panels ever assembled in a very, very long time. And perhaps you may never see this again in your lifetime, the kind of erudition of this panel that has been set up. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. No hyperbole. I don't flatter. It's all fact, right? Let's go now to our production team, which has put together a fantastic docuseries. It's about the currency peg. So please turn your eyes to the screen for this docuseries done by the ECCB production team. Take a look, please.
To us in the West Indies,
the United States dollar in 1973. Barbados followed in 1975. Guyana linked its currency to the US dollar later that same year. Then in May 1976, Trinidad and Tobago made its decision. Anxiety deepened across the Eastern Caribbean. If neighboring countries were moving away from sterling, what would happen to the Eastern Caribbean dollar?
The move by Trinidad and Tobago government on Friday 28th May to link the TT dollar to the US currency came as no surprise to any of us in the business community. What is surprising, though, is the fact that as yet the EC currency is still tied to sterling, which is slowly but surely taking us into economic disaster. The 1976 budgets of some of the islands which increased taxes, the constant devaluation of the pound to which EC is tied, and the revaluation of the TT dollar will now bring such economic pressures on us all that unless the governments of the Eastern Caribbean territories act quickly to align EC to a currency other than sterling, the climb back to economic stability by many of our member states may be harder than we could ever imagine.
Business leaders feared the region could become increasingly vulnerable if the EC dollar remained tied to a weakening pound. Rising prices were no longer an abstract issue. Food became more expensive. Fuel costs increased. Governments introduced price controls on basic goods.
In the meantime, however, the economies of the islands concerned continued to suffer. A large proportion of the imports of these islands comes from U.S. sources. The purchasers have to find EC $2.31 for every US dollar they want to spend. The consequence of this is readily seen in the cost of fuel to us, which, because it is fixed on the US dollar, has automatically risen in price, although the cost of production has not otherwise risen. So also will the fancy goods and articles which people rush off to Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands to buy after having obtained US dollars for the purpose.
Most of the region's imports were coming from the United States. So as sterling weakened, imported goods became more expensive. Inflation was beginning to shape daily life across the region.
This matter of inflation attacks all, whether you belong to the wealthy half of the world, which we call the haves, or you belong to the poorer half of the world, which we call the have-nots. What is also clear is that positive measures are needed to cope with that type of inflation.
With the British economy crumbling, unemployment still rising, not only the pound, but all our economies are in grave danger. We are in danger because all of us now find ourselves doing heavy trading with the United States of America, and the ECC dollar is still tied to the pound sterling. On the face, two crucial decisions confront us. One is whether we should follow our bigger brethren, Barbados, Jamaica, and Guyana, and align our currency to the US dollar. And two, whether we should adopt as a deliberate policy the diversion of import trade from the US towards the UK and the sterling area generally.
The continued weakening of the pound increased concern throughout the Eastern Caribbean. Small economies that depended heavily on imports became increasingly vulnerable. Governments, businesses, and ordinary citizens across the region were feeling the strain. Across the Eastern Caribbean, pressure continued building. The weakening pound was no longer a distant international problem. It was affecting prices, trade, and confidence across the region. By mid-1976, the question was becoming harder to avoid. Should the Eastern Caribbean dollar remain tied to sterling, or was it time for change? In July 1976, after regional discussions and international approval involving the British government and the International Monetary Fund, the Eastern Caribbean dollar was formally aligned with the United States dollar. On July 7, 1976, the new parity took effect. EC $2.70 to US $1.
Well, at that time, we were like the last to change. Barbados had changed theirs. Trinidad had also changed after Barbados. Trinidad and Guyana had already changed. And in some cases, there was a little devaluation. But we took so long that we said we will, on the day of the change, that would be the value. And so there was no appreciation, there was no devaluation, and so it was at the cross rate.
"50 years after the decision to peg the EC dollar to the United States dollar, the currency remains a symbol of stability, confidence, and trust across the Eastern Caribbean. But that stability did not happen by accident. It was shaped during a period of uncertainty, when the region chose stability in the face of change.
The past 50 years have demonstrated our capacity to deliver stability, and now we must prove for the next 50 years we can leverage that stability for transformation and shared prosperity. And therefore, what I want to see, and that's what the big push is all about, is how do we leverage the foundation of stability that this EC dollar has given us and that we have shepherded, that we have stewarded, as stewards, that we have delivered for our people, to now move to transformation and increasing prosperity for every citizen of this currency union.
The decision made in 1976 became more than a monetary adjustment. It became a foundation of stability, of confidence, of trust. And perhaps that is the real story behind EC $2.70.